Hey guys, and welcome to Non-Interstellar Modeler. This is now part 3 of my Round 2 Space 1999 Eagle Transporter build. In this video, what we're going to do is concentrate on putting the engines together and the passenger pod. Alright guys, so I'm working on the engines. The first step is to put these halves together. There's 4 of these tanks here and 4 of these round, smaller tanks. Obviously very straightforward to put together, but you have to deal with the seams, and I just used that flexi file that I showed you in the earlier video, and that worked perfectly for that. Next step was to put these tubes and pipes together here. Not very complicated individually, but what I did find to be a little bit of a task was to get them to slide together in this way. And you have rods that are pointed in different directions and so forth, so I just had a little bit of a tough time just getting everything lined up. Now it does line up. You just have to take your time doing that. Unfortunately, I didn't tape it, but again, just follow the instructions. It really isn't too hard. Just take your time to do that. This is what it's looking like so far. So what I did was I test fitted each of the parts here just to be sure that these pipes do line up properly. Now there is enough give here that you can slide the tanks in and out, and that's what I'm doing here. Is I first put them together. I spent most of the time addressing the seams. I still have a little bit more work to do with a couple of them. And then lined them up, and once I was satisfied that everything was lined up properly, I removed them and then painted them, and then placed them back into a position there. Alright guys, here we now have the finished engine tanks. The remaining pieces were just these pipes that had to slip in, and those weren't very hard to work with. And again, I apologize I didn't tape more of this. It was one of those things that, you know, it was just too many things to do. I couldn't tape and try to get this done accurately at the same time, but again, the instructions are pretty straightforward. You just got to follow them. It's just I personally found a little bit of a challenge to piece all of it together, as I mentioned earlier, but just take your time and you'll get there too. Alright, so now we will move on to the engine bells. Alright, well, it's time to work with the engine bells. These are the trees that they come attached to, and my plan here is to use alclad to create the metallic finish. Now, if you're not familiar with alclad, it's this type of paint here. It's a lacquer paint that is applied after you lay down a coat of gloss black, and really creates a nice metallic finish. Now, there are a couple other brands that are out there that are getting really good reviews, but I'm going to be using alclad for this project. I used alclad for a previous model, and I really like the way it turned out. So the first thing I like to do actually is apply a flat black coating on the interior. It'd be easiest to get that on now. And then attach the bells, sand off any excess plastic, apply the gloss black, and then finally the alclad. Alright, so I finished painting all the engine bells this gloss black here now. And the next step, applying the alclad. Alright guys, and here we now have the finished bells. You can see that the alclad is quite impressive. Really gives it a really nice shiny metallic look. Alright, just a few comments before we move on. I just want to do a quick review here. My approach with putting this kit together has been just to do everything in sections. So as you saw, we started with the command module, we worked with the cages, constructed the spine, worked with the landing gear and the pods, then the engine assembly. So the logic behind doing it this way is that, one, it's a fairly large model, and secondly, I just think I'll have a better perspective and just visualize how I want to weather the model further once everything is constructed. With regard to lighting, I just want to mention that I decided just to light the cockpit. So we're going to have one light here with wires that run through here. There will be a switch that will be faced towards the underside of the ship, so it should be hidden, not be seen. And but it'll allow us to turn on and off the cockpit light pretty easily. However, I decided to make the passenger pod permanent, so we're going to go ahead and use the passenger pod as the main housing for the 9-volt battery. And the way we're going to accomplish that is by using magnets to allow us access to the passenger pod whenever we need to change the battery. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the passenger pod right now. And as you can see, there's not a lot of pieces to it, but I am going to be applying the red striping. So I'm going to construct most of it, put it together, and then apply the striping. I already did darken the windows here by painting them black on the inside, so that's already done. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward, and I will catch you up here in just a second. Okay, you can see we have the four walls constructed here, and I've left the floor detached. This is going to give us now an opportunity to plan out where we want to put the magnets and the battery. So I went ahead and just test fitted this grill here that goes on the bottom, and put a couple of the pieces here just to be sure that we're not going to have any protrusions that will interfere with anything. So you can see it looks pretty flat here. And so I decided to place the battery here in the middle. And I'm going to construct a little compartment here with some styrene plastic so we can hold the battery in place. We'll have long enough wires here so that we can remove the flooring when we need to. So it's going to kind of look like that. Okay guys, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to apply this red striping here on our passenger pod. And this is my MPC Eagle here, which as you can see I applied the red striping to. And I'm going to use this as a guide. And so if you are interested in doing this, just be aware, I will forewarn you, there's a lot of masking involved, and there's one thing that I don't really enjoy doing is masking things off, but you have to do it properly in order to get nice clean lines. So first of all, my stripes are going to be 2 centimeters wide, and then in order to mask it off, I used some thin strips of Tamiya tape as the main guide, and then adjacent to that I laid down more of this lower tack blue tape, and then just tape that to some paper and mask the rest of the area off. Now you could try to mask it all off if you wanted to and try to get it in one shot, but you know, I've done things like that in the past, and if I try to rush I just end up making mistakes, so I'm going to be a bit cautious here and apply 4 stripes at a time. In addition to the masking tape now, I've laid down some masking fluid here along the edges because again there's a lot of contour here, and rather than just taping it off and running the risk of paint running down into those areas, I made sure or double sure that we're going to get a good seal off there by applying that masking fluid. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started here now. Alright, so you can see this is the way our first set of stripes came out, and even with all the precautions that we took, there was still a little bleeding here on this side. So I'm going to have to figure out what to do with that. I might be able to mask that over with some of the paneling we're going to be adding here to the Eagle later. Hopefully that'll be the case, but I can tell you again, this is one of the reasons why it is difficult to sometimes do these sorts of things. So I think with the next set of stripes, I may decide to put some masking fluid here just to seal those areas off too. Alright, well I'm afraid our striping here came out with some mixed results. The stripes came out fine. Unfortunately, we did get some overspray here. Even with all the precautions I took, some of the red still got into some of the cracks and crevices there and created some of the spray that you see here. So I was trying to think of what I could do here. Rather than trying to repaint these areas white, I decided to use these areas as places that I can apply some shading and some paneling, since we got to do that anyway. So what I'm going to try to do now is apply some light gray here and cover these areas up. So let's give it a shot and see what happens. Alright, here we now have the finished pod. I can tell you that the light gray did not work. It really just wasn't looking right. So I ended up having to mask over the red stripes and repaint the white areas that were showing all the red that had bled through. So it was a bit aggravating to do that. You know, I can tell you that if you want to put red stripes on your passenger pod. I'm not trying to discourage you to do that, but just be aware it is a bit of an effort to get that done. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and work on the flooring now. There is more detailing to do here. I do plan on applying some pastels to create the panels and stuff that you see on the sides, but I'm just going to save that for later. I want to go ahead and get it all situated here with the floor. So let's go ahead and move forward with that. Hey guys, this is how it's going so far. Now, if you recall from the first video, I intended to put the wiring and the switch in this compartment here. A number of people have done that. It looks pretty good. But, you know, this area is pretty tight. I wanted to make it just a little easier to access the switch and the battery. So this is what I plan to do here, and that is just to wire the switch and battery into the passenger pod. So we need access to the passenger pod somehow, and the only way to do that is to make the flooring detachable, and so this is how I'm going about it. So first I've attached 4 magnets to the flooring. I made some markings here, lined everything up, and that allowed me to place the magnets properly. And then the second thing was to figure out a way to attach the magnets now, the adjoining magnets, to the passenger pod. So this is the way I'm doing this. So I'm using strips of styrene plastic, and so I'm attaching the magnet first of all to a strip like this, and then I'm using a secondary piece like this in which a hole has been drilled to accommodate the magnet. And then I glued the 2 pieces together. So this accomplishes 2 things. One, it secures the magnet a lot better, so there's not a possibility that the magnet would detach. And secondly, it allows this to be flush, which is necessary in order for the floor to line up properly. So I wanted to take a second to show you actually how I am attaching these things. So first of all, I'm applying some super glue along here. And you can see there's a little dot here, and there's also an extra marking on this side, and that's what allows us to align the magnet properly. So the dot is made so that it's in the center of the magnet, so we're just pulling it up like this, and we just got to hold it in place. Okay, and so you see the magnet now is completely attached. Alright, so we have one more. Okay guys, so the magnets are all in place now, and I ran out of these magnets, so I just used a double set of this size here. And you can see again the magnets are here, so they will clip on like that, and you can see it holds pretty nicely. So the next thing I'm going to do now is install the switch. We're going to go with this small switch right here, and so we're going to make an opening right here. That is, if we align this grid here, you can see it's going to be right here, so it should be fairly well hidden, and that will allow us to turn on and off the lights pretty easily there. On the opposite side then, it'll be adjacent to the battery about right here. We can move the battery slightly over there, and it should work out pretty well. So let me go ahead and proceed with that. Okay guys, this is the hole for the switch. I made it with the Dremel using 2 small holes next to each other, and then using an X-Acto knife and my files here to shape it. And the plastic isn't too hard to work with, so that wasn't very difficult to make. This is the switch here. I know it looks a little large, but enough of it has to stick through, so you can see it's going to look like this. And bear in mind, this is obviously on the bottom part of the passenger pod, so it shouldn't be too conspicuous. And also, there are going to be some other detailing here, including the landing pads as well as the bells, so I think it'll look alright. So you can see it's fairly easy to flip like that. And I'm going to attach it on this side, obviously, with some super glue, and lock it down pretty well. Alright, well that ends it for now. We'll pick up then in part 4. What we have left is to finish up the passenger pod. That includes wiring up the switch and getting ready to hook everything up for the lighting. Have some weathering to do and apply some paneling here on the passenger pod, and then we will start piecing the model together. Then we've got a bit more weathering to do and a decal application. So we're getting close. I know it doesn't seem like it. Everything seems a bit scattered right now, but we are getting close here. So I will see you then in the next one. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, as usual, at interstellarmodeler@gmail.com or here at the YouTube channel. Thanks again for watching. Take care.